Hey, everybody, it's Jeremy Rosenthal, your briefing attorney, publishing a story that originally aired on Live Now from Fox back at the end of July in 2024 about President Joe Biden the week after he stepped down from the Democratic Party nominee, talking about Supreme Court reform. It's a hot topic. It may or may not be a hot topic now that Donald Trump is the president-elect, soon to be president. At the time of the interview, it wasn't clear whether Kamala Harris would be getting inaugurated this January or Donald Trump. Now that it's Donald Trump, we know that he's not really talked much about Supreme Court reform. Obviously, at the moment, they've got a 6-3 conservative to liberal advantage in the Supreme Court. So you would think that there's no real reason for him to want that, at least not right now. But ethics in the Supreme Court is always a topic. It's always something that bears watching. Nobody likes the trust me model of ethics. And we'll see what this entails going forward. Thanks and enjoy.
Trial attorney Jeremy Rosenthal. Jeremy, good morning. Always a pleasure speaking with you here on Live Now.
Good morning, Gina.
So a lot of concern this morning hearing of this breaking news. President Biden set to announce some plans to reform the Supreme Court. Can you put this into perspective? Is he trying to reform some of the recent decisions we've made as it relates to former President Donald Trump?
As of last week, Joe Biden is a lame duck. And I'm a lawyer, not a politician, but it sounds like he feels a little more free to take some swings here. The Supreme Court has got historically low popularity right now. And he's taken some swipes at some really low hanging fruit. You've got a Supreme Court where it's been in the news that Clarence Thomas has taken who knows how many free trips. Ketanji Brown Jackson has gotten free Beyonce tickets. Neil Gorsuch's name, Brett Kavanaugh's name. There's a lot of issues with the Supreme Court, and the Constitution has, it seems like, a loophole in it, which is that there is no enforcement mechanism for the Supreme Court. The executive branch can't do it. The legislative branch may or may not be able to do it. And so basically right now, they are in the trust me role of governance, which Americans just don't like. The Supreme Court over the last 6 months has taken the attitude of we follow the rules of ethics because shut up, we follow the rules of ethics. They passed something by a 9-0 vote back in December that has absolutely no enforcement mechanism. So the president, as a lame duck, is kind of getting a little more aggressive with the Supreme Court. Whether that pans out for him or not, we'll have to see.
Great points as always you're making, Jeremy. Another thing we're keeping a close eye on is that potential constitutional amendment as relates to presidential immunity. The timing of this, of course, as we know, we are looking ahead to the November election, right?
I mean, there's no way he's going to get that done before an election, and that's such a hard road to go down. I mean, to amend the Constitution, we all have to look back and remember to the 8th grade, right? You need 2/3 of the legislature to agree with you. He doesn't have those kinds of votes. He also needs 3/4 of the states to then ratify that. A very, very difficult chore to do. But if he's trying to overrule a Supreme Court precedent, that's how you do it, is you amend the Constitution. You also have, in a couple of his other projects, he's got ethics reform, and he wants to impose some kind of term limitation. To do that, you could try to do it through legislation, but recently you've had Justice Alito publicly say that he doesn't think that Congress can do really anything to legislate the Supreme Court. You've had Justice Elena Kagan, who has invited Congress to do exactly that. So you see that even the Supreme Court doesn't agree on whether or not legislation would work. The only fail-safe way to do any of this would be to pass constitutional amendments. And as we just talked, that's really, really hard to do.
So the question now for many viewers is what's next? What's the likelihood that this will even happen? And then also there's concern about will anything stick, right? At one point, do things stick, or will there forever be changes until we move on in society?
Maybe he's looking at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. And remember, as citizens, as people, what we tend to do is we tend to look at the Supreme Court from a result-based lens, right? We tend to look at it from, okay, let's talk about the year 2024, July 29th, I think is the day today. So we tend to look at it right here, right now. But these are proposals that do, by and large, have broad support. Ethics reform, presidential immunity, also term limits. These are things that I think polling suggests that the majority of Americans are with him on. So maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, maybe they do build some consensus here on this. And I mean, look, you've got all of these stories that break one after another about free trips, free airplane flights, free tickets. And at some point, you would think that folks would just say, okay, we have to at least do that one. So we'll see whether or not these things gel. We'll see whether they stick. President Biden is around until January, and after that, he's done. And then you are going to have somebody in the Oval Office, whether it be Donald Trump, whether it be Vice President Harris, that is going to be probably a little more careful when it comes to publicly commenting about the Supreme Court, because that can be kryptonite, right? That can be political kryptonite. So Biden right now is a lame duck. And again, he can afford to take these free cracks at the Supreme Court.
And see, that's the thing, Jeremy. Let's say this goes through, right? Could it potentially get changed again if former President Donald Trump becomes the next commander in chief?
If you do it through Congress, yes. Now, it's hard to even do that. But if you do these through congressional acts, about the only thing that you could do through Congress is regulate the amount of justices. There was an act that allows Congress to do that. And that's, the Supreme Court hasn't always been 9 justices. It has been increased over the years, has not been increased over a very, very long time. President Roosevelt in the 1930s suggested increasing the Supreme Court, packing the Supreme Court. He was an extremely popular president, but this really threatened his presidency when he started talking about packing the Supreme Court, because I think Americans view that as a real power grab. So I don't think that you're going to see anything quite like that proposal. I think what the president is rolling out is a very measured political response. In fact, he rolled it out in an op-ed this morning in the Washington Post. What he suggested was that, as far as term limits go, was that the president each term gets to nominate 2 Supreme Court justices, and those justices expire after 18 years. Again, I have a hard time thinking he would be able to do that through anything other than a constitutional amendment. The Constitution has been interpreted to give federal judiciary officers a lifetime appointment. So I don't know that you could legislatively change that. Really, really complicated, difficult stuff. I mean, we could spend a whole semester teaching this class, of which I don't know what grade I would get. If it's like my law school, I mean, I got by on my looks. So we'll just have to see where this thing goes.
Jeremy, always a pleasure speaking with you here on Live Now from Fox. We definitely appreciate your candidness, right? Thank you so much for joining us for this breaking news alert. Anything else you want to add? Anything myself and the viewers need to be keeping a close eye on as all of this unfolds today?
Again, to see whether this thing has sticking power. And again, maybe in a month or 2 months or 3 months, maybe see what the president is saying here. He's in lame duck territory, and this may be just him sort of loosening his belt, right? Maybe he's had a chip on his shoulder about the Supreme Court, and now that he's not running for re-election, maybe he feels a little more free to kind of take those swipes. Vice President Harris can back off of some of these proposals if she doesn't like them. She's got that liberty to do that. Legally, it's pretty fascinating stuff that we can kind of nerd out about. But I would just tell everybody to stay tuned. These are very, very slow changes. If any of them actually come to fruition, we'll see.
Jeremy, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.